Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
All right, so we'll have one last session on chanting. Last night, I think we got to Prabhupada being informed about Bhakta Richard from New York, living in Radhakunda. As Prabhupada told us, we shall even if the songs you sing are bona fide, in the sense that they're not apparatus, but at the same time we should only chant the verses or songs which our acharyas have given us. So that unfortunately it's become a bit of a habit for our devotees when they go to Vrindavan. I know some of them, they go out and collect other mantras, because do something new. Anyway, Prabhupada didn't particularly like that. He just wanted us to chant the mantras that he had given us. And so, if you remember, there was Tranakata, who I mentioned, had joined the Vrindavan Yatra, and he had collected up some songs, including some cassette of the Krishna Das Babaji. He was singing them. So somebody had recorded him singing these different bhajans. So that was in, I think, September of '76 when I brought it to Prabhupada's attention. But actually, that tape had been doing the rounds, so to speak, even before we got back to Vrindavan. So on July 17, 1976, Prabhupada received a couple of letters from devotees in America. So one devotee, Damodar Pandit Prabhu, he was from New Vrindavan, so he had some questions about these mantras that were just being introduced. So he said he had heard some tape recordings of Prabhupada's godbrother, Krishna Das Babaji, singing some devotional songs. So he wondered if they were bona fide or not. He asked if it was a good idea to make a comparative study. He also wanted to know if it was a good idea to make a comparative study of different philosophies from the Krishna Consciousness viewpoint. He felt that it would be useful in their preaching work. So Prabhupada replied that he had not heard the recording of his godbrother, so he could not make a judgment of them. But apart from this, he said you should just go on with your chanting the Hare Krishna Maha mantra and the Panchatattva mantra, and don't divert your attention. You cannot understand the meaning of the Indian songs, and simply parrot-like chanting of the songs has no value. So he wasn't very happy to hear that, these tapes were being made and distributed. So that was in July. In October, that was when Tranakata Prabhu came up to Vrindavan. So there's a devotee here from Chicago. His name's Tranakata Das, who is very interested in singing different bhajans. Several times I've heard him sing the Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunjabi Hari, Jaya Gopi Jana Balaba, Jaya Giri Varad Hari, Jaya Giri Varad Hari. So that was a new style. So rather than, he was singing it with this new tune, rather than singing it the way that Prabhupada does. So in view of what Prabhupada had recently said about not changing anything given by the acharyas, I approached Tranakata and asked him where he had learnt this new version. So he said he'd heard it on a tape by Achyutananda Swami. He was also singing other bhajans that are not in our songbook, and he said that he got them from Prabhupada's godbrothers. He even had a tape of himself singing a song written by B.R. Srila Swami. So we had a bit of a debate on the merits of what he was doing, and I decided to bring the matter to Srila Prabhupada for clarification. So I brought up the issue about chanting new versions of existing songs and the chanting of new songs. As far as the new version of Jai Radha Madhava was concerned, Prabhupada said that it was all right, but he added, Bhaja Krishna is not all right. I never asked him about Bhaja Hare Krishna, but he mentioned it himself. So the thing is, they add these things without asking, and that is the danger. It's better just to follow the Guru. Prabhupada confirmed that the song and the singing of his godbrothers was also all right. Nevertheless, his preference is clearly that we stick to whatever he has introduced and not be so interested in running here and there, gathering up new songs, as this may cause a distraction for us. As you said before, our Western mentality is to always seek out something new. We're never satisfied with what we already have. So I think the next day, October the 7th, 1976, Tranakata Prabhu gave me another tape this morning featuring a Kinchana Krishna Das, another of Prabhupada's godbrothers, chanting some stotras. After I told him what Prabhupada had said yesterday, he wanted to verify whether this new tape was bona fide or not. So I played it for Prabhupada during his massage. Again, Prabhupada said it was all right to listen to, but he shrugged and he said, they'll never be able to pronounce these things, neither they will never be able to understand them, so what is the use? So we talked a little bit about the verse Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam Japa Hari Krishna Hari Ram, which Prabhupada particularly didn't like. And so we were in Fiji. This is May the 2nd, 1976. Myself, Guru Kripa Maharaj, we were sitting with Prabhupada in a quiet spot. And Guru Kripa brought this issue up about Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam Japa Hari Krishna Hari Ram. So Prabhupada's feelings about the Mayavadis are well known, but there are variations of Vaishnavism which are not so clearly understood. Desiring to get some clarification on gurus who may not be so far removed from our lineage, Guru Kripa Maharaj cited the statement in Shastra that if someone can induce others to chant Hare Krishna, then they must be empowered and therefore qualified. He then asked about this Radharaman Charandas Babaji in Bengal, who in the early part of this century had induced people to chant a mantra which included the holy names. He built up a large following, but the mantra was his own invention and not strictly within the parampara. Prabhupada acknowledged that the man had some credit, but he said that overall he was not successful because of his deviation. Prabhupada said that he introduced a new system of chanting, Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam. So the Nitai Gaur chanting, that will have some effect in Kali Yuga. He said although he was presenting it pervertedly, the beginning was Nitai Gaur, so it would have some effect. So he didn't know actually. He did not. Prabhupada said he did not know actually the identity of Nitai Gaur from his words. He used to preach that Nitai is Radharani and Gaura is Krishna. So this is Siddhanta Viruddha. But some way or another he was chanting Nitai Gaur, so some effect was there. Just like sandalwood, he said, you do not know which way better to make the pulp come out, but if you rub it anyway, some pulp will come because it's sandalwood. So he said this Babaji had some effect of chanting Nitai Gaur, but later on they deteriorated because they did not know exactly what they were chanting or the meaning of it. So Guru Kripa Maharaj brought the conversation to events closer to home. He wanted to know about Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers because they have disciples, they're properly initiated, and they give the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So Prabhupada gave us a frank, unbiased analysis from his own broad perspective and his own successful experience. He said the thing is, the spirit, the real service of preaching is stopped. The formality is going on, but the real business is stopped. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement means Amara Agyaya Guru Hanatari Desh. Become a guru and try to liberate everyone in this land. So that is stopped. Do you follow? The formality is there, but the real life of Lord Chaitanya's Mahaprabhu's movement is preaching. Otherwise, why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says Amara Agyaya Guru Hanatari Desh? Tara means preaching. So Yarideka Tarikaha Krishna Upadesh. The meaning of that, instruct everybody to follow the orders of Lord Chaitanya as they are given in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. That is stopped. They are satisfied if they can construct one temple and beg some rice for the neighborhood. Sir, we've got some temple, give us some rice. So they are satisfied with that. But the spirit of preaching forward, Papitapi Jatachila Harinama Udarila, that is stopped. So by Harinam, by chanting in this way, to live a little peacefully in the temple and eat and sleep, that much they have got. So if that is the success, then that success they have. And this was condemned by my Guru Maharaj. He used to say, to earn some money by showing the deity in the temple and to eat and sleep, it's better that you become a sweeper in the street and earn an honest livelihood and live that way. So that was his accusation. They'll build a temple, install the deities, and then they would try and get people to come in, see the deity, give some money, that's it. No preaching, no explanations or anything. So in other words, the deity just becomes a vehicle for collecting money and living. So he said many temples in Vrindavan have the same mentality. They think of the operation of the temple as a business, that if people are coming and they give something, then that is their good income. According to the temple's popularity, they think this is our success. Therefore, they are deteriorating. So it is not success. Success is his who is pushing forward the preaching method. That is success. And if we think that by showing some temple deity, we get some money and rice and cloth and just peacefully live there and don't bother going to Fiji or other places. So that much success they have. But that is not Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. Prativichaya Jata Nagaradigram Sabatra Prachar. So what are they doing for that? That's the point. Guru Kripa asked Srila Prabhupada, what if sometimes a disciple, he may go to preach, but he's not preaching in the exact same spirit as his spiritual master. So therefore Prabhupada said he is not to preach. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says Janma Sartaka Karikara Para Upakara. go and do good to others. First of all, you do good to yourself. First you become really a preacher, and then you go and preach. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never sent neophytes to go and preach. For the neophyte, the preaching is not their business. For the neophyte, one should stick to the worship of the temple and the deity, the deity in the temple. And those who have understood the philosophy and applied the philosophy in his life, then he should go on for preaching. Otherwise he'll preach wrongly, like this Charan Das Babaji, and it will stop. He wanted to preach, but he didn't know how to preach. And therefore, after his life, his whole movement is finished. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does not say like that you remain a rascal and go and preach. No, Jamma Sarataka Kari. Your first business is that you make your life perfect. Then you go to preach. Perfect means that you learn how to obey my orders, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that is perfection, Amara Agaya. So if you were actually perfectly carrying out the orders of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then you were preaching. Otherwise you'll do wrongly and mislead people. So don't do like that. Anda Yatanandaya Upaniyamana. If you remain blind, don't try to teach other blind men. That is misleading. First of all, open your eyes. So everything is there. Nobody can do anything whimsically. If you do whimsically, concoctedly, then it will be a failure and it will not be as effective. So just an additional bit of information about Radharaman Charan Das Babaji. Prabhupada was in Bhubaneswar in January of 1977. We were having a discussion in his room. So this person, Radharaman Charan Das Babaji, he was mentioned. So Prabhupada was discussing Ramakrishna, and he described him as a Sahaja. That's the Ramakrishna mission. He also mentioned Radharaman Charan Das Babaji, who introduced the chanting of Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam Japa Hari Krishna Hari Ram. He also posed himself as being one of the gopis with his Sakis, old friends, and he also advertised that he was even having menstrual periods. This is the Sahajas. You see sometimes when you're in Vrindavan, they wrap themselves up in saris, but they're actually men, but they try to artificially invoke the mood of the gopis. They dress themselves up as gopis. But as Prabhupada said, in the back, they're keeping so many widows and smoking bidis. So anyway, this is Prabhupada's comment about Radharaman Charan. He was even advertising that he was having menstrual periods. So it's quite radical. So February the 6th, 1977, Prabhupada was in Panihati. So we've been offered some land there. The house of Raghava Pandit was there, and several other associates of Lord Chaitanya. It was right on the banks of the Ganges. So some people from that area, they had decided to approach ISKCON to take over the area there and build a temple. So Prabhupada was interested to do that. And we'd already gone out in January to see the Panihati area. So now in February of 77, at Panihati, on the site of the Chiradayi Mahotsav Leela, where the banyan tree is, Prabhupada had them measure out the land and also some adjoining on the riverbank, which he said we should apply for also. So he wanted to get some kind of gift of the land from the government officials there. So he said it could become an important center and thousands would come because it is approachable by the river. He liked the idea of travel from Panihati to Mayapur by river, and he said that we should also purchase some large river launches and use the Ganges as a highway to travel to Mayapur, because this highway is more safer than the other one. It means the regular trucks and buses highway. So we actually last couple of years, we attempted to fulfill this instruction of Prabhupada's, or at least his suggestion. And we had about, the MVT, you know that MVT at the back of Krishna Balaram. So we have a trust there. So we decided to try to do or fulfill this desire of Prabhupada's. We had a boat which seated about 40 odd persons, and they had that constructed in Thailand. Then they had to bring it over on like a shipping container. And we tried it out, but unfortunately we haven't been able to make it a success yet. The problem is that, one of the problems is that the makers of the boat didn't do it properly. So it takes about 6 hours to get from Calcutta to Mayapur, which is too long. What we wanted was launches that would go up and down at least once a day. But we haven't been able to make that a success, unfortunately. But Prabhupada had suggested the idea, so hopefully at some time in the future they'll be able to do it according to Prabhupada's desire. So anyway, Prabhupada liked the place and he wanted to do something there. So as we looked at the land, a kirtan party of older men came to greet him with garlands and some chanting. Prabhupada ignored them because they were singing Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam, Japa Hare Krishna Hare Ram. So this happens to be the site of a small temple which has a murti of Radha Raman Charan Das Babaji, the originator of that chant. Prabhupada accepted the garlands that they offered him, but otherwise he simply ignored them. So I saw, there's only like 4 or 5 of them, all old men. And when they came forward, Prabhupada was very kind of aloof from the whole thing. He let them put the garland on, and then, he didn't say thank you or anything. He was, I could see he was clearly not happy, because this group were chanting this bogus mantra. So another, so chanting Nitai Gaur and Jai Sachinandan will make your life perfect. So if you do it wrong, you get no result. If you do it correctly, you get, the full spiritual service. So July 7th, 1976, Prabhupada was in Baltimore just for the morning. We'd been in Washington, D.C. for a number of days, and somebody suggested that we could go to Baltimore. He'd seen a picture of the Gaunitai deities there, and just to go and see the deities, then instead of going on the morning walk, we went to Baltimore. So at 6 a.m., Prabhupada drove to Baltimore, about 40 miles north. A couple of days ago, Rupanuga Prabhu had shown Prabhupada a photo of the Baltimore deities, Sri Gaunitai. Prabhupada found them so attracted that he decided to visit. On the way there, he didn't speak much on the way, preferring to chant quietly on his beads. Several other cars of devotees also accompanied our vehicle along the highway. So the temple is a large 2-story suburban house with some land at the back and side. The main temple room on the ground floor has been the main room on the ground floor has been converted into a temple. The altar was profusely decorated with dozens of vases of colourful flowers, and everything was clean and bright. Prabhupada stood for several minutes in front of the gorgeously dressed forms of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, visually drinking in the beauty of their visage. The deities bore the most beautiful of smiles, appearing effulgent and well cared for. So then Prabhupada mounted his Vyasa and received Guru Puja, and spoke for a short while from the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 20. So this building now that was being used until I think 2 or 3 years ago, finally they got permission from the local authorities to build a bigger place. So they dismantled that house and now they've built a nice temple. I think that temple was opened last year actually. So Pradyumna Prabhu led the devotees in responsive chanting of the verse. When we finished, Prabhupada smiled. It is, of course, a Bengali text, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Prabhupada is from Bengal. So he chuckled, telling us that technically our chanting of the verse was all right, but we should learn how to chant it as the Bengalis do. So the verse concerned Sanatana Goswami's questioning of the Lord as to why he had to suffer the threefold miseries of life. In his half-hour discourse, Prabhupada explained that the suffering was alleviated when one regained his original spiritual position. So he also expressed his satisfaction with the devotees' service. So this benediction, he said, is offered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who has very kindly come here, Nitai Gaur. So if you take advantage of his mercy, you are very fortunate that Nitai Gaur is here. So if you simply chant Nitai Gaur and dance, then you'll be happy. There's no difficulty. You are chanting Jai Sachinandana. So this simple chanting, Jai Sachinandana, Hare Krishna, I am not manufacturing. It is the injunction of the Shastra that in this age, simply by chanting and dancing, you get complete spiritual service. So I'm very glad that you're taking care of Nitai Gaur so nicely. They are so nicely dressed. So continue these activities, and even if you cannot do anything else, at least simply chant Hare Krishna and Jai Sachinandana and dance. That will make your life perfect. So, very simple process. So, November the 5th, 1976, Prabhupada was back in Vrindavan, and he began lecturing from the 5th canto, 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, in his conclusion of his lecture, he said that if we practice according to the prescribed method, Shastra Vidhi, then we can become liberated. Otherwise, he said, it's not possible. Quoting both Lord Krishna and Rupa Goswami, who both advise that we not act whimsically, but only according to the scriptures, Prabhupada condemned the concocted forms of spiritual practice. In that connection, he also had a few words to say about the fashion of making up one's own mantras. He said there are so many mantras that they have invented, just like Hare Krishna mantra is prescribed in the Shastra, and they have invented so many others. Although there is the name of the Supreme Lord, still you have to follow the Shastra. If you say Rama, 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 or Radhe, 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 Krishna, so there are so many mentioned. That is also the name, but you have to follow the Shastra. And the Shastra says, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So you have to take that. Not that you can say Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. No. Why? Why? Is there anything in the Shastra? No. You have invented it. So what is the value of your invention? You are not perfect. But they take it like that this is my guru, I've got some followers, I invent some kind of chanting. So this is nonsense. You must follow. Mahajano Janagata Sapanta. You cannot invent. So sometimes, I live in Mayapur. sometimes the devotees that take up, the lead in the chanting, then they'll say like they're singing the Guru Puja prayers, and then they'll slip in an extra word or miss out a word just to make it different. So that Prabhupada didn't like that, just inventing your own versions. Better to stick with what you've been given by your Guru and not commit offense. So one example of this, Prabhupada arrived in Mayapur on January the 17th, 1976. There was one young man, he was from Vrindavan, he was a Shastri. So him and a couple of others that actually joined ISKCON for a short while. The other ones left, but this particular gentleman, Anantaram Shastri, he was still there. So when Prabhupada was on his morning walk, Anantaram Shastri joined us. So Prabhupada expressed his satisfaction that such an educated man has joined our movement. I mean, he was a Shastra by qualification, not necessarily just by name. So Prabhupada instructed Bhavananda Maharaj to make sure that he is well looked after so that he may not go away. Although a somewhat self-conscious individual, Shastriji was eager to recite a poem that he had composed for Srila Prabhupada's pleasure. So as we walked along, and without asking first, Anantaram Shastri suddenly broke out into a melodious verse, singing the praises of Bhagavan Sri Gopal, or at least it seemed so. His chanting was impressive to my untrained ear, but Prabhupada was very alert when Shastri sang, Nachye, Nachye, Aile Gopal. My dear Gopal, please come to me dancing. Prabhupada stopped him. He said, don't manufacture things. Do not manufacture knowledge. You take knowledge from Bhagavan, but you don't order Bhagavan. Just follow Bhagavan. So this is not wanted. Do not write concocted poetries. It is not beneficial. You simply follow. So Prabhupada told him that his singing actually was sense gratification, because he was giving instructions to Gopal, please come to me dancing. So Siddhanta Garuda, mixed philosophy. So Prabhupada stressed that our process is to take instruction. It is all nonsense, he told him. Why you should ask Gopal to come to you? You cannot order, you must follow. We are to carry out the order of God and not to order God to carry out my order. So this is a mistake. Prabhupada went on for some time condemning the attitude with which people generally approach God. He said that in India they sing this traditional arati song, which repeats the words Sabko Sampati De Bhagavan. So De Bhagavan means give me. And in the West, he explained that the Christians have also got the same idea. The whole world, Prabhupada observed, they have accepted God as an order supplier. I order, you supply. The Christians also. God, give us our daily bread. Tamal Krishna Maharaj was there as well. So he said, and if God doesn't give, then God is dead. That's their attitude. If they don't get what they want from the prayers to God, then they can't be a God. So Prabhupada agreed, yes, dead. So this is going on. And our prayer is, I don't want anything. Simply engage me in your service. So this is the real prayer, which has been taught by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There's another devotee, not exactly about chanting, but there was one devotee called Pandu Das. He was an artist, and he'd been living in Mayapur. Prabhupada had given him the engagement. At that time, our front wall, it was clear. Now if you go to Mayapur, it's just everything's shops, all over thousands of shops. But in these days, in '76, There was nothing on the front road, no shops, nothing. It was just completely clear. And Prabhupada had given Pandu the instruction, because he was an artist. They kind of made these decorative panels on the wall, repeating. So he said, you paint pictures of my books on all these panels. So now in August of on August 19th, 1976, Prabhupada had opened the temple. Gagamuni Swami, the GBC for Mayapur, and Jayapataka Swami, they had come to Hyderabad for the opening, and then they had some meetings with Srila Prabhupada. So last March, Prabhupada had asked that the large panels, which had been sculpted in cement along the front wall, be painted with advertisements for his books. He was satisfied to hear that two artists, Anaka Dundubi and Pandu Prabhus, had completed about 17 of the panels. So that time he just took a report. He was happy to hear that the instruction was being followed. And finally, February the 9th, 1977, Prabhupada went back to Mayapur. So we walked onto Bhaktivedanta Road, and Prabhupada inspected some of the new paintings that had been done on the large panels on the wall itself by this Western devotee, Pandu Das. Prabhupada saw them, but he didn't say much, and I got the impression that he wasn't exactly overjoyed by what he saw, but he wasn't dissatisfied either. So then he saw a Bengali verse had been written on the wall, and he stopped and he asked, where does this verse come from? So Pandu admitted that he had made the verse up himself. And then he had it translated into Bengali and then painted it on the wall. So Prabhupada was not at all happy, and he shook his head and admonished him quite strongly not to do it again. Do not dare like this, he told him gravely. You should always remember, don't manufacture ideas. So then Pandu asked, should we change this one? Prabhupada told him, no, it's all right, but don't dare like this. So Pandu nodded, yes. So not long after Prabhupada's disappearance, then Pandu also disappeared. He took reinitiation from some Babajis in Navadweep. He still lives down the road from our temple, and he's into his he worships Gorgadadha. So that worship was not introduced by Srila Prabhupada, and actually the man left ISKCON. Yeah, he thought that he could get better instruction from the Babajis in Navadweep than he could from Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada, in that inspection, he picked up there was something going on. This man has written his own verse, or invented a verse, and then put it up. So he wasn't particularly happy with that at all. So, chanting of the Sanskrit, the sound is important. Prabhupada was in New Vrindavan, July the 1st, 1976. He remained in his room and finished the questions and answers from Bhavan's journal. So I don't know whether that journal is still being printed. In those days, Bhavan's journal was a quite popular kind of pseudo-spiritual magazine. So they had drawn up a list of about 20 questions, and they put it out to different gurus to get their opinion. They had sent these questions and answers to these different gurus, and then one month at a time they would issue that and feature another guru like Chinmayananda or so many others, not Sai Baba or whatever. So Prabhupada had been included on that list. They sent him the questions and answers. Unfortunately, Prabhupada's secretary at that time was Pushta Krishna Swami. He saw the questions and answers, and he didn't reply. he wanted to keep that. He thought Prabhupada was too busy. So anyway, eventually he started interviewing Srila Prabhupada with these questions, and over a period of a couple of months, Prabhupada completed that, and then it was up to Pushta Krishna to type it all up and send it to Bhavan's journal. So Prabhupada did his part. He replied on the different points that they raised, but unfortunately Pushta Krishna Swami took months and months to finally get it all typed up. By the time that he got it typed up and sent to Bhavan's journal, they'd already closed, shut down on that particular feature article. So Prabhupada's answers to their questions were never published. Anyway, Pushta Krishna was doing little. On July the 1st, then we were in New Vrindavan. Prabhupada was in his room, and Pushta came in with some more of the Bhavan's journal questions. So the first one of the session, question 10, caught my attention. It asked, will the mantras lose their sanctity or holiness if they are not in the Sanskrit language? So Prabhupada replied that they are transcendental sounds and they cannot be changed. The sound must be vibrated, he said. You cannot translate it. The sound is, just like the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the sound must be produced. You cannot translate it because then it will be artavada, speculative interpretation. So that is prohibited. You cannot interpret or do otherwise. The sound vibration must be there. Then it will continue in sanctity. Pushta Krishna asked for a clarification. He asked, is that to say that the mantras can be written in Devanagari script or in Roman letters, but the sound must be the same? Yes, Prabhupada said, the sound is important. So it didn't matter what particular script, I guess here in Tamil Nadu you have your own script, the Bengalis have their script, the English, we have our script. The main point is the sound vibration must be the same, whatever script that you put it in, but you have to get the sound. So we did it later on. Ironically, that interview was taken in New Vrindavan, and a few years later, New Vrindavan, Kirtanananda Swami, decided to renovate or change some of the features of the Hare Krishna movement. He formerly, before he joined ISKCON, he had been a student at a religious college, and he was from an American Baptist church. So he just decided that Sanskrit was such a foreign sound to the Westerners, so he had his men translate all these mantras into English. So when they, say like they came to do Mangalarati, they would sing the English words, not the Sanskrit. So it's kind of a weird situation. A lot of devotees left that situation. He continued on. He had his men dressed in Christian monks' robes, and there was a lot of irregularity going on there. So although the GBC asked him not to do it, he went ahead and did it anyway. So for some time they were out of the ISKCON fold. Later on, of course, then Radhanath Maharaj took over, and then they brought all the Sanskrit chanting back again. But that's an example, by somebody who thought that he knew more than Prabhupada. He started this bogus chanting, although the words in English indicated the same meaning, but Prabhupada said that sound vibration is the important thing. So another feature, corrections in Kirtan. On Ram Navami, April the 9th, 1976, Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, and he gave a class. He said that the Hare Krishna mantra is enough. It includes Ram, other mantras are not necessary. So at midday, Arati, some devotees were singing over the microphone a mantra glorifying Lord Sitaram, Raghupati Raghava Rajaram, Patita Pavana Sitaram. So that's very popular. They still do it in ISKCON, every temple practically, on Ram Navami. So Prabhupada heard them and he sent me into the temple with the message that they stop. He wanted them to simply chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, since it automatically includes Lord Ram. He said that other mantras were not necessary. So Prabhupada's focus was always chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Yeah, there's so many other things that you can do, but this is required. So he didn't like the devotees picking up these little verses here and there, even if it was, an occasion where it would be nice to do it in front of the deities. So Prabhupada said that the other mantras were not necessary. So I did a little bit of investigation about where this verse, Raghupati Raghava Rajaram Patita Pavana Sitaram, where it had come from, because I heard that it was something that one of Gandhi's men had made up. So I wrote to actually the secretary of the Bombay Savadaya Mandal and Gandhi Book Center. So I wanted to know, is this something that Gandhi wrote or somebody else? So they said, the reply was that somebody else has written this with the suggestions of Mahatma Gandhi. So in other words, Gandhi had kind of made it up and then he had somebody distribute that. So it's not a bona fide mantra, but when Prabhupada was in Los Angeles in February of 1969, one of the devotees, Krishna Das, he had written to Prabhupada about that song, and Prabhupada replied, regarding the Raghupati Raghava song, we are not concerned with this because it had a political motive. It is not pure devotional service. Gandhi was a great statesman in the garb of a saintly person, so that the Indian population would blindly follow him. But his motive was political, and therefore we are not very interested with these verses. However, you can sing the first two lines, Raghupati Raghava Rajaram, Patita Pavana Sitaram. So that was okay, but the rest of the song, there were many verses, it was all mixed in with political agendas, so Prabhupada didn't like it very much. But just singing Raghupati Raghava Rajaram was okay. So anyway, the point is to not invent, but to stick with the verses as they're given to us by the acharyas. So another incident was in Vrindavan again in September of 75, and at that time I wasn't Prabhupada's servant, I was the temple commander, and Prabhupada had given us instructions that we should at least have the devotees attend 3 artis a day, Mangal Arati, and then again at the noon arati, and then again in the evening arati. So we were trying to do that, and as the temple commander I had to kind of ensure that people were attending. It was sometimes a difficult service to do, especially because I had to organize the 24-hour kirtan as well. So at noon, sometimes it was difficult to get enough people, to do the chanting and the arati there. And so this particular day I was doing it myself. I was chanting in the temple during the midday arati. So I was leading the kirtan, singing over the microphone, and I was also chanting the refrain. So they still do it in Mayapur. I've told them dozens of times. Let one person lead and then everybody else responds. But they insist on having whoever's leading, they sing the lead, and then they also sing the response. So you get like this continuous sound vibration, but there's no breaks in it. So Prabhupada didn't actually like that. So I was chanting on this day in the temple during the midday arati. I was leading the kirtan, singing into the microphone, and I was also chanting the refrain. So Prabhupada sent his servant Upendra out to tell me to stop chanting the refrain. He said only the lead should be broadcast on the speakers, but not the refrain. So at that time they did it, but anyway, as I say, nowadays it's become a permanent feature of most of our Indian temples, at least. They insist on singing the lead and the refrain. So March the 5th, 1977 in Mayapur, it was Gaur Purnima early that year, and Jayapataka Maharaj, he had organized a kirtan competition. So they put the word out, not just amongst our devotees, but also, surrounding areas. They were advertising that we're having this kirtan competition, and whoever is the best kirtan, then they'll get some prize. So the intention was good, but Prabhupada didn't like it. So there was one evening when the kirtan competition seemed to be going on very well. Different groups from around Bengal had been invited, and groups of our devotees representing different yatras from around ISKCON, they had all been invited to this competition. So the best group was to be awarded some prize. So each evening, several different groups had been on a specially erected stage to do their chanting. In the evening, Prabhupada came out from his room onto the veranda to go to the bathroom. So he stopped for a moment to hear one of the Bengali groups. So there was this group, quite lively, about 20 people. They were singing very melodiously and everything. So it sounded nice. And so Prabhupada stopped for a moment to hear this group, and then he asked me what I thought of it. So, if you were asked by Prabhupada, what do you think about this, or what do you think about that, it's kind of like you don't know what to really say, because you don't want to say something that's not bona fide. And Prabhupada's asking you your opinion, so I got a bit embarrassed. I couldn't really say what I thought about it. So Prabhupada had asked me the question, and then a moment later he asked me, do you want to know what I think of it? So I said, oh yes, Srila Prabhupada. I was off the hook. And Prabhupada replied with a smile. He said, I think they are doing it simply for money. Such chanting is worthless. And then he walked off into the bathroom. So Prabhupada could distinguish, we couldn't. We thought, oh, it's very nice. We're engaging so many people in chanting the Maha Mantra. So many groups had come from all around Bengal. And, we just thought it was, a nice expansion of the movement. But this was Prabhupada's reply. It's all bogus. They're simply chanting for money. So he didn't tell me anything after that, but I took it that because he'd mentioned it, that he wanted me to, relay the information to the organizers. That was Jayapataka Swami. So he walked off into the bathroom. He later condemned it, saying that the groups that had come were doing it simply to get some name and fame. Means that whoever won, then there would be advertised that we're authorized by ISKCON, or we won the ISKCON prize for best kirtan, and they'll make some show and get some money. So Prabhupada knew what was going on. Needless to say, I sent word down to Jayapataka Swami what Prabhupada had said, and therefore he decided not to hold it again. December the 23rd, 1975, Prabhupada was in Bombay. I'd just been on the party myself about 3 weeks. So we had a long discussion about the relationship between Lord Vishnu and Lord Shiva. At one point, the famous battle between Banasura and Krishna was mentioned, where the ultimate weapons of Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu were pitched against each other. The Shivdvara produced intense heat, but the Vishnu Dwara, which generated intense cold, and he was the victor. So this was on a morning walk on Juhu Beach. An Indian devotee said that when Prabhupada was very ill in Vrindavan with a high fever, that he had prayed to the Vishnu Dwara that he might reduce Prabhupada's fever. So he told Prabhupada, we were just reading in the Bhagavatam when you were sick. So anybody suffering from a fever means that you read such and such a portion of the Bhagavatam and then it should come down. So it seemed like a nice sentiment, but from Prabhupada's pure devotional viewpoint, it was not acceptable. He immediately stopped. He said, no, Vishnu should not be utilized for curing your fever. That is not bhakti, that is business. So Kirtanananda asked, well, can a disciple invoke Lord Vishnu's help for serving his spiritual master? So Prabhupada replied more enthusiastically. He also revealed something of his internal mood in his struggle to establish the Bombay temple. He replied, yes, that is nice. That is for curing Vishnu's representative. When we were in danger, there was so much obstruction for constructing this temple, and we prayed to Krishna that it should be stopped. We prayed to Krishna, please give us your protection. This is for Vishnu's purpose. So Prabhupada, when he had this difficulty there in Bombay, he says he was praying to Krishna to please remove the obstacles so the temple could be built. So that's not for his gratification, but that was for the purpose of preaching. So that was acceptable. And actually, this rascal, Mr. Naya, who had sold the land originally to Srila Prabhupada, in 1972, Prabhupada was in New Zealand, and he got a message that Mr. Naya had died from a heart attack. So Prabhupada clapped his hands. He said, very good. So I prayed to Krishna to remove this rascal so we can build the temple. So that, a little different than praying for your own relief or your own illness. But when it concerns Krishna's purpose, then you can do such things. Okay, so we had a meeting in 1977 with Rameshwara Swami about the Back to Godhead. So the latest edition of Back to Godhead had some articles about self-sufficient farming and things like that. And the whole article never mentioned Krishna once. So a lot of devotees, they were upset that they're now putting out BTG. Their idea was that they were trying to make it more easily readable and acceptable to the Western-speaking, English-speaking public. So they removed all the Sanskrit names and just gave some English equivalent of it. So some devotees were not happy with that, and the whole issue came to Srila Prabhupada. So Rameshwara was the BBT trustee, and when he arrived, then on the 25th of February 1977, this issue came up. So in the BTG, they had what they called a mantra page, and they had people who were not dressed as devotees, without tilak, without kurta, but wearing regular business suits or whatever, looking like, ordinary Western karmis. So they had this page every issue of Back to Godhead to make it, just to give people the impression that you can chant Hare Krishna anywhere you like, you don't have to be in the temple, you don't have to be dressed like this or wear tilak, anybody can chant, and it will give you so many benefits. So, if you chant this way, then you'll be successful in your business, or, you get a nice job or whatever. So that was the mood of it. So a lot of us didn't like it. It came to Prabhupada. He called for Rameshwara, and then they had a whole discussion about it. So another point concerned the mantra page at the beginning of the BTG. It shows small pictures of persons who are not full-time devotees, but who chant and it gave a comment from them underneath the picture. So it is meant to convey that anyone can chant without having a shaved head and robes. Prabhupada pointed out that getting people to chant is all right, but they must understand that there is a process for chanting. He said they must come to the initiation point, regardless of whether they live in a temple or not. So I asked Prabhupada whether it's an offense to advertise material benefits coming from chanting. And Prabhupada confirmed it. Yes, he said, it is aparad. So he elucidated on this point that they must understand that the chanting means there is a process and that they have to come to the point and then it will be effective. That was all Prabhupada's whole mission, at least to get people to chant Hare Krishna with some conviction, and come eventually to the point of initiation, at least that much. So Prabhupada wasn't very eager about this kind of new approach. He told us that there has to be some process, and that process means that one has to follow the regulative principles. So he stressed this again and again, that people have to know the proper process in order to get success. So because of that, then later on Prabhupada put Satsvarup Maharaj back as the chief editor, and he said you should just simply present, our philosophy as it is. So I remember the next BTG that came out, where Satsvarup Maharaj, was now the editor, and the title of the article was "The Demons Amongst Us," and then it was really hard hitting that people in the West, they don't chant or anything. So although they look like civilized human beings, they're actually demons because they don't chant the Hare Krishna mantra. So anyway, Prabhupada was happy to see that too. So the process is to follow the regulative principles. He stressed this again and again, that they should know the proper process in order to get success. There was also quite a bit of activity in the movement at that time in opening restaurants. And again, Prabhupada said, yes, you can open the restaurant, but people should know that they're eating prasadam. Sometimes we advertise vegetarian. Now the popular thing has become vegan, like that. And people just come in like a regular restaurant. They don't know what they're eating actually. But Prabhupada's instruction was that they should know that they're eating prasadam, it's spiritual food, and it will give them some benefit. So the same thing. So anyway, there's many points about, faulty ways of chanting. So there were some instructions that Prabhupada gave about how to get authorization. It's not that everything is bad, but you have to check with your guru in order to get clearance for doing it. So Srila Prabhu, he had moved to London in the summer of 1976, and he became the temple president in Bury Place. So he wrote some questions to Prabhupada later in the year, and he asked, and you asked about this last night, do we have your permission to sing Jaya Radha Landanishwara Radhe? So Prabhupada Prandana Hai. So he wanted to know, because we sing so many names of different deities, so he wanted to know, is it authorized to sing Prabhupada's name? So Prabhupada answered, yes, you have my permission to sing as you have requested. So I thought this question was very pertinent, since Prabhupada's recent comments on September the 6th, that singing mantras not given by the spiritual master is Guru Avagya. So this is the right way. Don't just do it, but check with your guru first. If he gives his permission, then you can sing your new verse or whatever it is. So there was another style of preaching that was just coming out also, was making musical records. A lot of devotees were selling them on the street during Sankirtan. So towards the end of 1976, this devotee, Krishna Kanti, he was in charge of Golden Avatar Productions. It was a recording studio. And he recorded Srila Prabhupada, he recorded Vishnu John and several others like that. So that was very nice. But then they wanted to do something which would be more easily understood by the listeners. So they wanted to do it all in English instead of singing the mantras in Sanskrit or Hindi or Bengali. They wanted to sing them in English but still present the philosophy. So they came out with this record album, Change of Heart. Anybody heard of that one? The Mangalananda, he wrote the whole thing. It was originally some songs that they'd written for this touring theatre group that they had in the early 70s. Prabhupada stopped the touring group, but the music that they'd been playing, they refined that, and then they made a record album out of it, and they were selling that on the street. So Rameshwara, when Prabhupada was there at the studio, he asked Prabhupada if these songs could be played in the temple. So Prabhupada said, no, why in the temple? Outside is okay, but you don't need it for inside the temple, because the album was actually aimed at non-devotees to attract them. And actually nowadays, when I look at the words or hear that album, it's actually pretty Krishna conscious. What they wrote at that time, was pretty well the straight philosophy. Anyway, one problem with it, they sent a sample of it to Prabhupada in India, and they had a professional artist do the cover of the album. The record albums in those days were quite big. And so he had taken one of the verses from the record. A caterpillar changed his mind. It was along the lines of, what do you call that? Not metaphor. Anyway, they had taken the song, one of the songs, and to illustrate it, they had got a wooden twig. There was a caterpillar on the twig, and then he was reaching up, and above him in the air there was a picture of Krishna. So something like that. So they wanted to know if Prabhupada liked the album. And as soon as Prabhupada saw this picture of this actual caterpillar on a branch, he really didn't like it. He said, this is impersonalism. This has got nothing to do with devotional service. So he made them change the album cover. So, none of us really knew all the standards. We had the good fortune that we could always ask Prabhupada, is this right or is this wrong? But the tendency is always there, do something new. So the record album was nice, actually, the words were good, but they made the mistake with the front cover of the album. Prabhupada said, this is not devotional service, some mundane caterpillar. Yeah. So he didn't like it very much. So other things, as another section on bhajan. Somebody asked me, was it this morning, about playing the harmonium? Who was that? Somebody asked me yesterday or today. Yesterday. Yeah, so the harmonium is quite a popular instrument. Actually, the harmonium itself was invented in about 1830, sometime around then. So it's not, a devotional instrument. And there was a kind of a controversy between whether they should be playing the harmonium or not. So at least Srila Prabhupada, of course, he was expert on the harmonium, so it's not kind of wrong. But actually Prabhupada himself didn't like the harmonium to be played during arati. He said it was okay for bhajans, but not during the kirtan. So there's a few letters on that topic. This is from November the 14th, 1968. Prabhupada was writing to one of his early disciples, Aniruddha. So in the temples, this is Prabhupada replying, Arati is performed 1.5 hours before sunrise to awaken the deities. Each offering is made by moving it in 7 big circles, starting at the lotus feet of the Lord and going clockwise round. First of all, you offer burning camphor or ghee, 5 fires if possible, and that is offered in this way by slowly circulating them before the deity. So in 1968, there were practically no deities in ISKCON. The first big deities were installed in 1969, but they had some small ones, and Prabhupada was training up the devotees how to do arati. So he was going through the list of items that have to be offered to the deity and how to do it. So do this way, slowly circulating them before the Lord. With your left hand, the bell is being rung, and with your right hand, the offerings are made by circling. Next, then burning doop is offered. Then water is offered in a conch shell. Then a nice handkerchief is offered. Then a flower, such as a rose. Then the devotees are offered a fan. Then the deities are offered a fan, a nice peacock feather fan. And then the last item is the blowing of the conch 3 times. So throughout this, the arati, the bells are ringing, cymbals are being played, mridanga is going on, the gong is there, harmonium is there, etc. So at that time, Prabhupada was saying, the harmonium can be part of the arati. But later on, as ISKCON developed, Prabhupada changed his mind about that. So on January the 11th, 1976, Prabhupada was in Bombay, and Bhavadak Das, he was the temple president in Vancouver. He was one of the more well-known kirtanias in ISKCON. He could play very expertly, he had a good voice. So Bhavadak had written to Srila Prabhupada and asked if it was all right to play the harmonium in the arati. So he told Prabhupada, Prabhupada told him, the harmonium may be played during bhajan, if there is someone who can play melodiously, but it is not for kirtan and arati. So that, some people observe that stricture, some people don't. Yeah, but Prabhupada's opinion was that not for arati and not for kirtan, but okay for bhajan. A few years back we had a kirtan standards committee that I was part of for a short while. So we couldn't decide what constitutes a bhajan, where you can play the harmonium and what doesn't. It was kind of not really, clearly explained. Just don't play it during the kirtan and arati. So there was another question about the harmonium being played. This one was in December of 1976. Prabhupada was in Bombay. Yasamati Nandan Prabhu from Ahmedabad, he brought one retired couple to Hare Krishna land in Bombay. He introduced them to Prabhupada, and they were offering their services. So this fellow, he said that he was actually good at teaching the harmonium. So in the conversation, then this fellow said, you have 6 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the evening, the same thing with no change. So in the morning I was there, so no change. I brought this gentleman and this lady. They want to come here and stay and work for the institution. So he is 74 years old. She's also very active and she knows very good cooking. So Prabhupada replied, he said, oh, very good. So actually the Indian man is Yasamati Nandan. So Yasamati Nandan told Prabhupada that they cannot speak in English. That's a difficulty, that they can only speak Hindi and Gujarati. And they're feeling very, very shy. So this man actually is a very great expert in growing wheatgrass, which has become very popular. Everybody likes it very much. Your devotees are also liking, and he's an expert in this. He is also a very good music teacher, and he has a very good tape recordist. He does puppets as well for the last 20 years, and we can make Krishna Katha puppets for all of our theatres. Then he said that we can train our young boys for the same thing, videotape, everybody and everything, and he knows about this audio-visual communications. So Prabhupada was happy. He's a very talented person. He knew a lot of things. So he said everybody has got some talent. So swakamana tam abhyacha. This is wanted, that whatever talent that you have got, you can utilize for Krishna. So actually the Indian man was Kartikeya Mahadevya. I just remembered. So he was there. So he said, this is very good. This is wanted by the devotees, and he's taking classes every day. So Prabhupada said that in Krishna consciousness, all varieties of work can be utilized. So Kirtaniya Sada Hari, you get perfection from chanting the mantra. Vyasaki, Sukadev Goswami, he simply narrated. And narration is also kirtan. So recitation of the Bhagavatam, by reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, he became perfect. So Pariksit Maharaj, he was simply listening, he also became perfect. So there are 9 kinds of bhakti in the process. Any one of them, you'll become expert, and then you'll become perfect. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam. So then he looked at them, he said, so where is this family? So Kartikeya said he's got 1 daughter and 1 son. His family is in Bombay. 1 son is expired earlier. And this man has got good talent of teaching Hindi, music, and tape recording. So she also knows very good cooking. And Prabhupada said, yes, if she can give cooking direction, that will be very good. And then Kartikeya mentioned that she's also, this man plays very good harmonium. And the man himself, Kartikeya himself said, he can play any musical instrument practically. So Prabhupada, as soon as this man mentioned harmonium, Prabhupada said, no, we don't want to introduce the harmonium. This is at the end of 76, so I've been on for like 6 years, 10 years practically. So Prabhupada said, we don't want to introduce the harmonium. So we were a little surprised. And Kartikeya asked, well, that's what he's teaching at the moment. He's doing it out of force. So Prabhupada said, other musical instruments, if he plays, his attention will be diverted into the musical instrument and not to the chanting. So he'll be looking to see, oh, we've got some melody, whether it's going on nicely, but that is not good. Our concentration should be on hearing Hare Krishna. That is bhakti. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his party, simply they were playing the kartals and kol, and that was that. In those days, of course there was no harmonium, but there were many stringed instruments like sitar, esraj and others, but these were not used by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's party. Sometimes we do use to attract, but it is not required. So as far as Prabhupada was confirmed, you only need kartal and mridanga, that's sufficient. But no harmoniums, no sitars and whatever. Unfortunately nowadays, the last few years it's become very popular to have a whole musical group, trumpet, flute is another one. So they think they're enhancing the kirtan, but actually what happens, they get wrapped up in the melodies. Don't play it on this level, like that. And the attention of the chanters goes away from the Hare Krishna mantra and into music productions. So Prabhupada didn't like that, actually. So anyway, what can you do? Sometimes things happen, and once they get a certain momentum, it doesn't matter how many times you tell them what Prabhupada wanted, it doesn't twig. So Prabhupada himself, of course, was an expert harmonium player. We were in Tehran in August of '76. I was giving Prabhupada his massage, and somebody was playing a tape recording of Prabhupada singing one of his own songs. So the melodious strains of the harmonium caused Prabhupada to smile. He was listening to this recording. He said that as a young man, his friend's sister had wanted to marry him because of his expertise at playing the harmonium. Okay, another. May the 12th, 1976, Prabhupada was in Hawaii. With no visitors, the evenings are very quiet, and Prabhupada has been reading or chanting. But tonight, he suddenly decided to play the harmonium. Not wanting to miss out on such an opportunity, myself and Pushta Krishna Maharaj came in and sat behind Prabhupada as he was playing. So Prabhupada didn't call for us, but he just decided to have a break and practice his harmonium. So Prabhupada looked, as we came in, Prabhupada looked over his shoulder at us, and I thought that he might mind the intrusion. But he said, "So, bring the coal and kartals." So we hurriedly ran around, got the instruments, and feeling very privileged, we accompanied him as he sang the Das-Avatar prayers, and we were also able to record it. So that was nice. Sometimes Prabhupada would just, take out the harmonium and sing a few songs and then put it away again. So, okay, another section on recordings.
This is 9:06.
Oh, when do we have to stop now? Okay, I have a plane to catch. So I think there's quite a bit of stuff left, but we've covered most of the ground. Is there any quick questions?
Did Srila Prabhupada play harmonium in front of deities actually?
I'm not sure. When I was with Prabhupada a year and a half. I think I heard him play the harmonium 2 or 3 times. He went into the recording studio in Los Angeles, Golden Avatar Studios. That's actually the next paragraph. But he went there twice in one visit. He was playing the harmonium, and then he played the mridanga, because they didn't have a good mridanga player. So they explained to Prabhupada, we can record your harmonium playing and singing on one track, then we can do another track separately with a mridanga, and then we can put them together afterwards. So Prabhupada was happy with that. You might have seen that film, that video of Prabhupada. He's sitting back, he's got the mridanga on his knee, he's pointing, he said, "My father wanted me to be like this." He said he never wanted me to be a worldly man. So, okay, any other quick questions or comments? No? All right, so thank you all very much. You've been very kind hosts. It's been a real pleasure and an eye-opener to come to Salem. Practically none, the whole society doesn't know what's going on in Salem. But actually, this is very impressive. You're doing a wonderful job building this temple with stone, and you have so many facilities. So let's hope that things continue to develop. You've got a huge... I was thinking, how many people are in Salem actually? I never, I knew there were 1 or 2 devotees, yourself and what's his...
Yeah. Gaur
Bhagavan, and who was that one that is with the science preaching in Bombay now? Adbhuta Hari.
Yeah.
So, but that's it. I thought maybe there was half a dozen devotees here. And there's a couple of hundred, so very happy. So, if my health holds out, if we can arrange it, it would be nice to come back again maybe next year. That would be my pleasure. So thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
His Grace Sauri Prabhu ki jai.